So good to meet you, and I hope you recover from your jet lag. Um, you are about to perform in one of my favorite queer plays of all time. But there are quite a few people who've not seen or heard of it, sadly. The night
Mm.
that Larry Kramer kissed me. The night that Larry Kramer kissed me. So could you just tell us a little bit about what it's about without giving it away?
Of course. The night Larry Kramer kissed me, which I've literally just been going through my lines right here, is about a young man that every year on his birthday he goes to watch a piece of theatre. It's his tradition every single year. And this play follows him initially over the course of 10 years as he goes to see a chorus line at 6 years old, and he goes to watch Second Street and all these fantastic musicals. But this one year in particular, he's left home, he's left and come to the big city. He's come to New York, as most young gay people do in America. And in 1985, he goes to watch a play, one that he's heard is gay because he hopes to see a real live kiss upon the lips of a real live man from a
Mhm.
real live
Mhm.
Brad Davis,
Mhm.
who at the time was such a heartthrob.
Yeah,
And he goes to watch this play that happens to be called The Normal Heart by Larry Kramer, and leaves a profoundly changed man, and leaves with a purpose and becomes embroiled in activism. But what I found so compelling about the play is I think a lot of people associate plays from that time with a lot of trauma and hurt and heartbreak,
Mhm.
which this play definitely has its helpings of. But this play is really about what it was like to live in the 1980s and the 1990s in New York amidst
Mhm.
a state allowing a genocide of young gay men through a plague, and what it's like to live through that and have fun
Mhm.
and go out and love people and fuck people and hook up with people in the gym and go cruising. And it was such a seismic experience reading the play for the first time, because I'd only really read about that period of
Mhm.
time as one of incredible negativity and fear. So suddenly getting this Bible of love and joy and excitement really sort of spun my head in the best possible way, and it just became this story that I was instantly said yes
Mhm.
to, and was so incredibly excited to share with
Mhm.
people, because I really feel that the conversations it opens up are exactly that
Yeah.
of, well, of course that time was scary, but equally it was fun, and we'd just gone through the sexual revolution, and people had gone to Julius's bar in New York and fought for the right to be
Mhm.
served, and then Stonewall had happened, and we started to get huge pieces of legislation through and huge pieces of equality both in the UK and the US and the rest of the world
Mhm.
for gay people.
Yeah.
And then this plague comes along.
We're very fortunate because Larry Kramer was an important activist, especially during the AIDS movement, but he was also a fabulous writer too, because that should
Mm.
be said. I'm wondering, did the producers explain to you why now are you reproducing this important part of queer history?
I think this is a really, really important question. That was the first question I asked.
Mhm.
And I kind of feel like it's important that that question is thrown to the audience as well. But I think why now, in terms of why the play is being put on, is we are in one of those moments that I believe will lead to a movement, in the same way that in the 80s we were in a series of moments that led to
Mhm.
the gay rights movement. And I think, especially for our trans siblings right now, everything does seem terrifying, but
Mhm.
it's a real wake up call, particularly with like the ruling in the UK last year that hard won rights can be removed and taken away. And looking across the pond at the US,
Yeah.
it seems dark and gloomy and scary. And I actually think there's something really, really powerful and really poignant in portraying a piece of theatre set during one of those moments that at its core is joyous and hopeful and funny and sexy and thrilling, because we have to hold on to those things just as much.
Mhm.
There's a quote from John Recchi that really sort of sticks with me in a lot of the work that I do, particularly relating to
Mhm.
homosexuality, where he proclaimed that promiscuous homosexuality is a revolutionary act. And I think that's so true today. And I just think finding the joy in queerness is revolutionary in of itself.
how tough was it for you? Because you were born way after all of this. So you and your generation, I don't mean to, um, what does the AIDS pandemic mean to you?
It's history, but it's equally living history, and I think the effects of it are absolutely still felt today.
Yeah.
Um, and the more I've sort of reflected upon it and learnt about it, the more I've realised that even though, of course, I wasn't alive at the time, but the ramifications of it have impacted me massively, especially Section 28, which was
Mhm.
brought in as a result of the HIV/AIDS epidemic and the conversations that were happening around the quote unquote gay plague that Thatcher had
Yeah.
and Reagan had sort of coined. And whether it's my like inability to donate blood in the UK in the same way that my straight friends can, but equally like going to school, Section 28 was repealed in 2003,
Mhm.
and I'd started primary school by that point, but just repealing an act doesn't change the curriculum. And I definitely felt at school that our teachers, if someone said, "Oh, that's gay," they wouldn't say, "Oh, don't say that, it's a bad word," because that would have been in breach of Section 28, because that would have been
Mhm.
promoting
Yeah.
homosexuality. And I think a huge impact and legacy that that horrendous piece of ruling and legislation had was I grew up only accessing queerness through slurs, insults, or online pornography.
Mhm.
There wasn't really much representation on television that I can remember aside from characters in Doctor Who. That was
Not in
basically it.
not in Hollyoaks that you were in then.
Well, in Hollyoaks, of course, but
We should
it's
explain that's a very popular UK soap opera, if you don't know,
yes,
which Gabriel was starting for some years, I think. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but it shouldn't be the case. I think that growing up in the 2000s, the examples are limited to one hand. That like Hollyoaks, Doctor Who, maybe one or two soaps, but
Yeah.
even then, those stories would be about a gay person and generally about their difficulty coming out. And I think there is something so radical about showing queer people just
Mhm.
existing. And I think what this play
Mhm.
does is equally radical, and it shows a gay man existing in such a difficult time. And that in of itself is
Yeah.
incredibly powerful in the same way that I think today the power of seeing queer people, trans people on screen is massively bolstered by their existence outside of sufferance. And
Do you think your audience are going to know who Larry is and who he was and how important he was? Or is this a total learning curve, do you think?
I'm hoping for a bit of both, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
I definitely came to this play with a broad knowledge of who he was.
Okay.
The Normal Heart, very weirdly, is my favorite play, and it sounds like something you
Yeah.
say for press, but it absolutely is. I remember
Okay.
coming to this play in university and reading it alongside Angels in America. At the time, Pose was just coming out, and The Normal Heart absolutely sort of shifted my perspective on what art
Mhm.
could and should be, and what my
Mhm.
art will be.
Mhm.
Um, it's the play that I recommend to people. It's the play that I think massively changed me. I will never ever forget watching it at the National Theatre
Yeah.
in 2021. It's the most powerful, most profound moment I've ever had in the theatre or in my whole life. Is that moment at the end of the play. And for those who haven't read The Normal Heart and had the luxury of doing so, I won't spoil it. But there is a moment at the end, there is a death at the end, which is sort of inevitable at that time. But in the Olivier Theatre at the National, I heard this noise, which
Mhm.
sounded like someone laughing, but it was someone so loudly and audibly sobbing. And it was like
Yeah.
this wave of emotion just traveled around the amphitheatre and hit you. And I've never sobbed loudly in a theatre before and had
Mhm.
this sort of collective moment of trauma
Yeah.
shared with what were a lot of queer people in the audience.
Mhm.
And that production at the end, the lights went down and the pink triangle was left on the stage. And I was so moved
Mhm.
and left with this feeling of incredible solidarity and clarity on what I want my work to do. And I think if I can ever in my life have the opportunity to be part of something that creates an effect on stage or in an
Well,
audience of any
I'm
type, I'll do
I'm at
that.
well, I was at the National 30 over 30 years ago. to see Angels in America. Hadn't done my homework. I was with my husband who later died of AIDS, and so moved. I think I put this in the canon of really good AIDS dramas and plays. But as you said, Larry, who I told you earlier, had the pleasure of meeting, had a great sense of humor too. I'm really pleased that your producers are taking it not just to London, to Manchester, because that's also a major gay capital. And if you look back, they did some important work for the community during the AIDS crisis. I'm pleased you're doing that. Do you know if there's any plans to take it elsewhere when you've done this run?
Who knows? I mean, I'd absolutely love to. I'm so pleased that we're opening it in Manchester because that's my city and it's the home of the gay village in the UK. It really does feel
Hmm.
like the sort of I would say it's like the queer capital of the UK, and so much of our gay rights movement in the UK started in Manchester. So it really feels right that we're
Yeah.
opening that play
And I
here and
was
rehearsing
shocked by
that
the
play.
number of aged charities and support groups you had at the time. I didn't know till I read up on you. So I'm pleased you're doing that.
Yeah, I feel so proud and really, really proud that we're partnering with the George House Trust as well on the final performance on the Saturday. So as part of the show, as well as presenting the show, we'll have a little interval, and then after that, we're going to have a conversation with myself and a different activist
Mhm.
or famous LGBT plus person. So we've got the unbelievably brilliant Dr. Monica Pearl,
Mhm.
who was one of the founding members of ACT UP and was there in New York in the 80s and 90s. And I had the joy of having her as my professor at university, and she introduced me to the Normal Heart. And now I'm interviewing her. And then on the Saturday, we've got the patron of the George House Trust, Russell T Davies,
Oh, yes,
that
yes,
we'll be
yes.
having an interview with, who
Check
I've
him
been,
out.
again,
It's a
very lucky
sin.
to.
Queer as
It's
folk.
a sin. And his new drama, Tiptoe, which premieres this year, which I'm
With
very
Alan
lucky to be
Cumming.
in.
Alan Cumming. Are you
Alan
in it?
Cumming, and I'm in it. Yeah, I
Oh,
am.
Mazel tov. That's great news.
Thank
That's great.
you.
That's really good news. Um, when David Drake, also a friend of mine, the writer, did this in New York, were you aware it became the longest running solo piece ever in New York?
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. And I
Hmm.
feel like more people should know this, especially that the longest running solo piece is about AIDS and it's by a gay man.
Hmm.
I think it's such, yeah, I mean, I hope it remains that way forever. And if anything changes, I think David needs to get back on stage and do a run longer than whatever might beat that record. But I love that he still holds that title. And
Yeah.
as it should have done, and as it still should, it is such a powerful piece of theatre. And like I think the best pieces of theatre uses the concept of theatre in the play to like power its message through. I think it's fantastic.
And I'm really glad that you're excited about it. And I'm glad. I feel like old when I'm saying this. You're bringing this to a new generation of queer people who should know this and should understand that the physicality of AIDS may not be so prevalent as it was. It's still there and it's still wrecked our community.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking to us. Good luck with the run. And if not, as we said earlier, this doesn't work out, you can always go back to being an adult film star.
Oh my
Say no
gosh.
more. Look Gabriel
Well,
up. Okay, thanks for talking to me.
thank you very much.
You always wanted all I want. I only wanted a job, and I was from the living. How am I gonna get through? How am I gonna get through? I come here looking for money, got to have it, and end up leaving.
I said to her this morning when we met her, I thought the title was perfect, In Love and Anger. Did you like that? Do you
Sure.
agree to that?
No, she did.
But it does show the both sides of you.
If you say so.
You drinks, I brought you flowers, I read your books and talked for hours. Every day, so many drinks,